What's up, gangsters? Happy 2026, 7? Jesus, it's almost April already, actually. Jesus, I'm so sorry. But as some of you might know, it is a yearly tradition here at Horrible Reviews to start the year with a video where I want to share with you guys 25 of the best movies that I've watched in the previous year. And as always, the best is just a misguided attempt at a clickbaity video title. Really, it's just 25 movies that I thought are interesting and that I'm going to share with you guys. So let's do that. But first, I sincerely want to thank the latest Patreon members since the last time I made a regular video, about a year ago. Jeez. Pixel Kitties, Elicio Diaz, Mark Corneo, Norid Red, Ton Maker, Tegan Smithers, Chris Madley, Hashtag, Gilgamesh, and Samantha Dadson. But seriously, I sincerely appreciate the support, especially while I'm barely making videos on this channel anymore. If anything, honestly, that is the best motivation for me to make more content. So, hey, here's a new video. As always with these type of videos, the clips that I use that I show from the movies, they're just taken from trailers that I found on YouTube. So the quality and editing, it might not always do the movie the justice they deserve. But honestly, if I were to edit these videos how I do my normal videos, it would actually be 2027 by the time this video would be finished. So yeah. So without further ado, here's 25 movies from 13-ish different countries, spanning 6 decades and a wide variety, hopefully, of genres. Let's take a look. All my friends hate me. Or do they? I mean, they wouldn't, right? Unless... Which pretty much sums up the emotional roller coaster Pete is going through in this British black comedy as he spends a weekend with some old college friends. And this one random dude they met just before he arrived. And oh my goodness, this movie absolutely nails that social anxiety and paranoia to a point where you, as the viewer, are on the verge of having a panic attack yourself. It's so uncomfortable, bordering on, it's like an abstract form of horror, all the while still being darkly comedic. And right up till the very end, you're never quite sure just how much of it all is actually happening and how much is just in Pete's head. It's an excruciating watch, but completely worth it. Art of the Devil 2, the second installment in the Thai black magic horror trilogy from the mid-2000s. And yeah, you can just skip the first one, as this is a sequel in name only, and easily the strongest out of the 3. About a group of high school friends who reunite after one of their father dies, but they have a bit of a shared dark past that might come back to bite them in the ass. This is classic black magic horror with an atmospheric rural setting, themes of karma, and a bunch of gooey, gory special effects. It's an effective little horror movie, and I love how no one here is like purely good or bad. The antagonist is great, and she actually gets fleshed out even more in part 3, which is an actual sequel to this one, to the second part. Still has nothing to do with the first one. Also, distribution company Error 4444 just released this trilogy in a beautiful new box set, and if you happen to pick it up, you might even see me pop up in one of these special features. Then we have Better Days, which was a huge box office hit and a whole cultural phenomenon in its home country of China when this came out back in 2019, which is interesting because I barely heard anyone here in the West talk about it. It's fantastic though, about this ambitious high school student who's being bullied and who then meets a bad boy street kid who ends up protecting her. And despite this being based on a young adult novel, this worked amazingly well for me. Sure, it tends to get a little overly melodramatic, but I honestly just got completely sucked in by it all, and I'm not even afraid to admit that I might have shed a tear towards the end. It's beautifully shot, gets much darker than the young adult adaptation label would have you expect, and honestly, it ultimately is just such an engaging experience. Yeah, I kind of really love this one. Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell. Now that's a title. Often labeled as the Japanese Evil Dead, this admirable little splatter flick follows the titular bodybuilder, I guess, as he visits his dad's old place with some friends where, of course, one of them gets possessed by an evil spirit and it's a true labor of love, with the director also playing the lead and doing all of the special effects himself. Which, sure, they're cheap, but undeniably charming. It is pretty rough around the edges, and despite its short runtime of just 60 minutes, it does take a little while to get going. But if you're a fan of no-budget, do-it-yourself filmmaking, it definitely pays off in the end. It's fun stuff. So, normally I don't include short films with these videos, but I gotta show some love to my man Anthony Leroy, an independent Canadian filmmaker who makes shot-on-video, found-footage-style horror comedies. I discovered his work last year during the Butt Film Festival, and I became instantly hooked. So let's take a look at Bum, about a news crew led by Leroy's alter ego Garth Brooks, attempting to do a story on the local titular bum, which doesn't go very well. And yeah, for a short film, it does take a little while to get to the action, but this is where the movie's sort of like hangout vibe helps a lot. Like, you can really tell they had a blast making this, throwing one-liner after one-liner. They'll keep you entertained. And then when they do get to the crazy stuff, it gets pretty crazy. Not just the goopy and gory special effects, which are awesome, but also the whole analog audio visuals. They just go haywire. At times it's a lot, bordering on like abstract experimental. I can totally imagine this being a little too much for some, but I actually really dug it. I love the chaotic energy. Kind of a show stealer here. So yeah, this is really fun, creative, do-it-yourself independent cinema. And while Bum isn't, Leroy's Ted Nightingale trilogy is available on YouTube and absolutely worth checking out to get a taste of his fun, weirdly cozy, and unhinged style of filmmaking. Ooh, back-to-back found-footage horror. Nice. Here we have Butterfly Kisses, and I kind of love the idea of its premise. See, a filmmaker stumbles upon this student film about a local urban legend, and then hires a documentary crew to document his attempt to prove that it's real, that urban legend from that student film. And even just that student film itself, it has a pretty good, like a genuinely eerie story. And the movie really manages to engage the viewer as we follow this filmmaker spiraling down this weird obsession. It's the right amount of creepy without relying on forced jump scares. And I love the meta approach to the genre, with, for example, the Blair Witch Project co-director Eduardo Sanchez appearing as himself to weigh in on the legitimacy of it all. I watched a handful of found footage movies last year, and they're just so often hit or miss, but this one was definitely an absolute hit for me. Really, like, one of the better entries in the genre that I've seen in a while. Chronicles of a Wandering Saint. Now that's a beautiful title. I randomly stumbled upon this Argentinian movie while on a flight, and I'm glad I did because it turned out to be just such a charming, wonderful experience. About a sweet, somewhat naive religious older woman who stages a quote-unquote miracle to gain some clout within her community. The movie is divided into two parts, beautifully separated by the meticulously well-placed title card. I don't want to spoil the twist that kickstarts the second part, but this is where the movie starts to lean into a kind of magical realism. It gets sentimental while reflecting on some very human themes, but never gets too heavy. If anything, it's surprisingly funny, all while maintaining a very genuine and sincere approach to what it's exploring. Yeah, very pleasantly surprised by this delightful little film, especially considering it's a first-time feature from its director. Good stuff. Yeah, I loved it. Then, for something completely different, Donkey Skin, a French fairy tale musical. Now, I'm generally not a fan of musicals, but this was just so lovely. The colors, the sets and costumes, I even quite enjoyed the music. It's based on the French fairy tale of the same name and tells the story of a princess whose mother dies, after which her father, the king, wants to marry her. Well, she's obviously like, well, fuck that shit. So, with the help of her fairy godmother, she escapes to another kingdom, disguised by wearing a donkey skin that makes her look oh so ugly. But then there's a prince and, well, you've heard a fairy tale before. And honestly, this movie just perfectly captures that whole, the whole fairy tale of it all. It's so cute, whimsical, only problematic in that old fairy tale kind of way, and wraps everything up so neatly that it's impossible not to go, aww, by the end. This was my first Jacques Demy film, and yeah, I'm definitely planning to check out more of his work now. So yeah, delightful. Last year, I also discovered the films of Peter Strickland, and so far my favorite has to be The Duke of Burgundy. It's a... how would you even categorize this? Well, I guess it's a Peter Strickland movie, as he has just such a unique style. A style that's definitely not gonna work for everyone, but for me, this movie is just so stylishly beautiful. The way it's shot, performed, how the story is written, the music, it's all so elegant. I guess you could label it an erotic romance drama following a couple in a sadomasochistic relationship. But instead of focusing on a more traditional narrative, the movie gives us a deep character study of this couple. Strickland's movies, in general, are more about vibes, textures, sounds, rather than conventional storytelling elements. Which, again, isn't for everybody. It isn't even always for me. But, I don't know, Strickland's style just really hit the right chord with me, and I feel like he just perfectly nails it with this one. Another director I wanted to dive in more last year was Finland's Aki Kaurismäki. I ended up seeing just one of his movies, but that one did immediately go on the list. Fallen Leaves. I love it. It's like a romance movie for depressed people. And I mean that in the best way possible. It is actually a rather traditional love story, with the man meets woman, the whole will they, won't they, and what have you. It just happens to feature two seemingly emotionless characters, which is totally part of the deadpan, dry comedy. It's surprisingly sincere and real, focusing on people with way less flashy lives than we're used to in our romantic comedies. Kaurismäki does a fantastic job making their everyday life feel grounded and real. Yeah, honestly, in a slightly depressing way, it's fucking charming. The Infinite Man, a brain-scratcher of a time travel, time loop movie from Australia, about a man who tries to recreate the perfect anniversary weekend away with his girlfriend using a homemade time travel device, but mostly just ends up complicating things to a mind-numbing degree. I think it all makes sense in the end, but with the layers and layers of intertwining timelines, it's hard to tell on a first watch without some kind of instruction manual, like primer style. That said, I loved it though. It's fun and exciting trying to solve the puzzle as you go along, and even if you can't, the mostly lighthearted tone and comedy will keep you entertained. There's only 3 characters, which I really liked, with the third one being the woman's ex-boyfriend who randomly shows up and obviously complicates things even further. I feel like I'm kind of doing a bad job selling this movie, so let me just tell you this. If you enjoy the time travel, time loop subgenre, just go in as blind as possible. I did, and I had a great time. Really, like a pretty fresh and clever approach to the genre. From Brazil, we have The Kiss, or more specifically, O Beijo no Asfalto. Alright. About a man whose life starts to unravel after he's photographed kissing a man who just got hit by a bus, and is then basically prosecuted by society, and especially the media, over what that moment might imply about his sexuality. And these themes of homophobia and masculinity make it feel surprisingly progressive for 1980s Brazil. It's based on the play by famous Brazilian playwright Nelson Rodrigues, which explains the somewhat theatrical feel. The storytelling, like the way information is revealed, the tension that slowly builds, a lot of this happens through dialogue, but it works surprisingly well on the screen. It did take me a little while to get into, but with this underlying mystery and growing sense of unfairness that becomes harder and harder to ignore, by the end, I was fully invested. And while it clearly deals with themes of moral hypocrisy and there's this social critique going on, I like how the movie still leaves room for ambiguity, like letting the audience sort of form their own judgment. So, yeah, maybe a bit of a heavier one compared to some of the other more fun entries. But if you're up for some great world cinema, you could definitely do a lot worse. Oh my. Little Fish, perhaps my favorite discovery of last year. A sci-fi romance drama set in a world hit by a pandemic that causes people to slowly lose their memories, where we follow a couple after the man gets infected. On a large scale, it does a great job showing the societal effects of a global pandemic, and with production of this movie wrapping just before COVID hit, well, it feels eerily prophetic. But then on a much smaller, more personal level, as we focus on this relationship, it becomes an absolute emotional roller coaster. Really, even just now while writing this review, which I wrote a while back and now recording it, it's making me tear up all over again. It really hits hard. Oh my, yeah. It's such a beautiful movie. Visually as well, it has some truly stunning cinematography. And the ending? Oh my goodness. Obviously, I'm not gonna spoil anything here, but it's kind of fucking perfect and weirdly hopeful. Please, do yourself a favor and give it a watch if you ever get the chance. I mean, I sincerely can't imagine someone not being moved by this beautiful movie. And now for a total 180, Mad Foxes, an unhinged slice of just pure Eurotrash exploitation. About a man who seeks revenge on the Nazi biker gang that raped his girlfriend, but then halfway through the movie kind of forgets that that's the premise of the movie. Everything here is just in such pure bad taste. There's terrible dialogue with even worse dubbing, mindless violence, and lots of sleazy nudity. Honestly, if it wasn't also unintentionally silly and cartoonish, this would have been quite a disturbing movie. It kind of goes without saying that this isn't a good movie, but for fans of hilariously bad and ridiculously absurd Euro sleaze exploitation, it's kind of a must-see. Really, gather some friends, get some drinks and snacks, and you're pretty much guaranteed to have a good time with this one. Then we have Match, a horror movie that admittedly isn't going to reinvent the genre, but I still really wanted to include it, partly because it's a to-be original, and as it turns out, that doesn't instantly mean it sucks. It was actually pretty great, as was Lowlives, another to-be original that I watched last year. But for now, let's focus on Match. About a young woman who matches, get it, online with a seemingly great guy, but then when she goes to visit the place he lives, and honestly, it probably still won't play out exactly as you'd expect. Yeah, this was fun, and I feel like the movie knows it's fun, which really works in its favor. There's lots of cool practical gore effects, and things get pretty unhinged. It walks the fine line between straight-up horror and black comedy. And while I wouldn't have minded if it leaned even more into the comedy, the end result is still a highly entertaining horror flick. Yeah, but definitely worth checking out. It's on Tubi, it's free. Go watch it. Hey, an Argentinian classic, 9 Queens. This had been on my radar for a long time, and I'm glad I finally watched it because, well, it's great. About a small-time con artist who gets approached by a more seasoned hustler who asks him to be his assistant, after which they set out to pull off an elaborate scheme involving some counterfeit rare stamps. On the surface, it might sound like your typical late 90s, early 2000s crime thriller, like very much in the wake of Tarantino and early Guy Ritchie. But this one really stands out thanks to its fun, clever writing, strong and entertaining performances, and great chemistry between the two leads. Really, I loved all the bantering and arguing. And, of course, can't forget about some good old fun and satisfying twists and turns. And that's me enjoying this movie purely, on the surface as an outsider. Because from what I understand, underneath all of this, it also taps into a very specific, at the time, like late 90s, Argentinian societal mindset, which gives the film a lot of like extra layers and depth, and absolutely places it a notch above your average crime thriller. So, yeah, really good stuff. So, I'm kind of a sucker for movies with a good time travel or time loop concept. I watched a bunch of them last year, so here's another one, and there'll be one more after. But for now, Palm Springs. It's basically Groundhog Day, but then with the comedy and edginess dialed up to Andy Samberg levels. About a guy, played by Andy Samberg, who's stuck in a time loop on the day of his friend's wedding, and then one day gets another guest stuck in that same loop. I've been a bit skeptical of modern comedies lately, but this was just so much fun. Highly entertaining, with the right amount of heart, as it leans into rom-com territory, but without it ever getting too cheesy. Samberg and Christine Milioti, they have great, fun chemistry together. And I feel like even if you're not the biggest fan of Samberg's brand of comedy, this one plays it relatively light and safe enough to work as a genuine crowd pleaser. Yeah, check it out if you're in the mood for something simply just fun and cute, with a little bit of edge. The Puffy Chair, some good old 2000s Duplass Brothers mumblecore, which, right off the bat, isn't going to be for everyone. About a guy and his girlfriend and his brother on a little road trip to pick up the titular chair, and then a bunch of stuff happens, but also kinda nothing really happens. Along the way, without it ever feeling forced, the movie does say a lot about family, friendship, relationships. They're all flawed, sometimes frustrating characters, but if anything, that just adds to the realism, especially combined with that typical mumblecore style improvised dialogue. It makes it feel real, like we're following people, actual people, rather than movie characters. And that's probably what I appreciate most here. I mean, for a movie that's kind of about nothing, it ends up capturing a whole lot of very human stuff. It had been a while since I dove into some Sion Sono madness, so I checked out Red Post on Escher Street and was very pleasantly surprised, since the madness, or well, some of it, gives way to something genuinely wholesome in this, I guess you could describe it as his love letter to cinema and its creators. See, this big deal young new filmmaker holds an open audition for his upcoming movie, and then we basically follow a bunch of people as they apply, all while the director is pressured by producers to cast these established actors. So it does feel rather episodic, but it works because basically every set of characters is interesting in their own way. They all bring something unique to the table. It is long and overwhelming with its sheer amount of characters. Honestly, it really took me a while to get into it. But in the end, it's so rewarding. The finale had me going fuck yeah. It's fun. It has that signature Sion Sono zaniness. It's exhausting, also in very typical Sion Sono fashion. But I definitely recommend it. From Junta Yamaguchi, the director that brought us Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, comes River, another delightfully charming, high-concept sci-fi comedy. This time around, the gimmick is a group of people at this inn who get stuck in a 2-minute time loop, with each loop presented in a single, meticulously timed continuous shot. I love Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, and this is basically that movie with a slightly different concept. But I simply can't be mad about that, because it's once again so cute, so whimsical, full of likable characters, and even manages again to pack quite a bit of heart towards the end. It's just so charming. Like Yamaguchi's previous film, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, and also something like One Cut of the Dead comes to mind. It's impressive what they managed to do on a seemingly tiny budget. It might get repetitive for some, which is always a risk with this kind of concept, but for me, it totally worked, and it just left me with that warm, fuzzy feeling. Well, I love it. We stay in Japan for Sexual Parasite, also known as Killer Pussy. So, yeah, something a little different, but also a lot of fun. Or, as my wife put it in her only Letterboxd review, what the Lumiere brothers intended to create when they invented cinema. About a group of friends that... doesn't really matter. I mean, it's called Sexual Parasite, Killer Pussy. Again, it's so fun. Everyone is so horny. It's a very horny movie, which isn't great when there's a killer pussy around. It's almost certainly self-aware, but honestly, it doesn't kill the magic. The acting is entertaining. The silly chomping sound effects. I think it's literally that one. It gets me every time. The digital special effects are hilariously bad. The practical ones pretty gnarly. And it has a tight 1 hour runtime. I mean, what's not to love? Still, obviously not for everyone, but for me, it absolutely hit the right note. I could only find this terrible quality trailer online, which definitely doesn't do it justice. But then again, what could? Last year, I also watched a bunch of writer, producer, actress Brit Marlin stuff, so let's talk about Sound of My Voice. I love the premise. About a couple who wants to make a documentary exposing a mysterious cult leader, charismatically played by Marlin, who claims she's from the future. And they do so, or they attempt to, by infiltrating the cult while pretending to genuinely join in. And I'm just a sucker for movies about cults, and this one does a great job building this uncomfortable tension, especially in how it keeps you on the fence with the whole... So wait, is she a fraud? I'm obviously not going to spoil anything here, but the ending genuinely made me go like, what? I'm still not entirely sure whether I love it, like the ending, or whether it's good or even makes sense, but oh my, is it intriguing. So, yeah, if you're in the mood for a tense, cult-themed little thriller that'll stick with you, at least for a little while after it ends, yeah, this is great. Last year, I also got really into writer, director, actor Jim Cummings, so let's talk about Thunder Road. Now, right off the bat, his style isn't going to be for everyone. He has this very specific, weird, frantic style of acting. It's like a mix of deadpan humor and awkward emotional outbursts. The 10-minute long opening scene, which is basically a monologue by Cummings' character at his mother's funeral, immediately sets the tone. He plays a police officer, and throughout the movie, we just follow him trying to deal with whatever life throws at him. And yeah, I can see people calling him a bit of a one-trick pony, but really, underneath all of that awkward intensity, there's some genuinely strong writing. This movie strikes a really nice balance between comedy and drama, dealing with very human themes like grief, family, work, pride, masculinity, all in a way that feels messy but sincere. So yeah, definitely a unique voice in independent cinema, and absolutely worth checking out if you're in the mood for, something just a little different. Let's throw in a fun one towards the end. The VelociPastor. Get it? And I know what you're thinking, but hear me out. So I watched this with a friend during one of our bad movie nights, and we both came out pleasantly surprised, mostly by the fact that this isn't even a bad movie. But really, it's not even so bad it's good. It's just a pretty solid comedy. Going in, I was kind of scared it was going to try too hard to be a bad B-movie, like Sharknado style. But the difference here is that you're never laughing at the movie, you're always laughing with it. It really, like, it fully commits and knows exactly what it is. About a pastor who something turns into a velociraptor. Honestly, it doesn't matter. It's ridiculously dumb, but it knows it is, and it just has so much fun with it. It's only 75 minutes long, it's well-paced, never boring, and packed with like genuinely laugh-out-loud funny moments, which again are all intentional. So despite me discovering this during a bad movie night, it's honestly just a perfect pick for any fun movie night. So yeah, gather some friends, grab some drinks, and relax. I can't imagine you not having a great time with this one. And let's end the list with Watcher, which I discovered while going down a bit of a Micah Monroe rabbit hole, which is always justified. It follows Monroe's character, who moves with her husband from the US to Romania, where she starts feeling increasingly isolated as he works long hours, and she begins to suspect that a neighbor is watching her. It's a very stylish, like almost Hitchcockian slow burn thriller. Very atmosphere-driven. It's leaning into this classic paranoia setup. Aesthetically, it's beautiful, very stylish, very controlled visually. Like, there's lots of beautifully composed shots. And so, while it is clearly very stylized, the central theme of paranoia actually feels very grounded. With this movie being written and directed by Chloe Okuno and centered on a female perspective, that sense of, female anxiety feels very deliberate, especially in how the movie deals with the theme of, not being believed or taken seriously. It's slow, yeah, but in a way that feels intentional rather than that the movie feels like it's just dragging on. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, yeah, I absolutely recommend you checking it out. And yeah, that's it. See you guys next year. I'm kidding. Hopefully. It's just, with work and life, it's just becoming harder and harder to find the time and motivation to work on this channel, which really sucks because I love making these videos. I love sharing movies with you guys. I actually really miss doing so. It's just, I hope you guys, and I'm sure you guys understand. So I'm just gonna try and do my best. Not making any promises as of right now. I'm just gonna try and do my best. I really appreciate every single one of you guys that are, still sticking around, still watching the videos. You guys are awesome. It does not go unnoticed. So yeah, hopefully see you all soon. Cheers, guys. Have a nice day.